Okay, we're live. So I'm going to be doing another live stream, as you can see. Um, so today I'm going to be doing a live top 7 list. And this is a list of top 7 actors who came close to playing Spider-Man, but thankfully did not. Okay, so let's get started at number 7. Heath Ledger. Yup, Heath Ledger wanted to play Spider-Man. He believe he. I'm pretty sure he was approached. I believe he was approached to play Spider-Man in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the first one. Um, but he said, no. He thought there were other people that could play the role better. Um, so, and now the reason why I don't think Heath Ledger would be a good Spider-Man. Heath Ledger was an amazing actor, but he just doesn't present himself as a Peter Parker, character. He just doesn't have the features to play Peter Parker or Spider-Man for that matter. And also, if he had played Spider-Man, well, I mean, he would have been contracted to be in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man sequels as well. And he never would have gotten to play Spider-Man. And it's the best for both Batman fans and for himself, because he ended up, if he hadn't played Joker, he wouldn't have won an Oscar. And if he had played Spider-Man, he would have been stuck in a contract, and he wouldn't have been able to do Batman. But because he was able to not play Spider-Man, he was able to play Joker, and he did an amazing job as Joker, and he won an Oscar for that. Now, next up on the list is somebody who appeared in the Spider-Man movies as a supporting character, but maybe didn't get the role he really wanted. And this is James Franco. Yeah, James Franco originally auditioned for Spider-Man. Now, James Franco, like many Hollywood stars, Hollywood actors, who start out at a young age, who start becoming famous at a young age. Um, you know, he's kind of like that actor who's a rising star, but eventually, while they grow up even older, start to become a joke. Um, you can call James Franco literally Shia LaBeouf 2.0, because that's pretty much what he is. But yeah, so he wanted to play Spider Man, but of course Raimi said nope, nope. You get to play Harry Osborn, and thank God he did not get to play Spider Man. That just would have been cringeworthy. I mean, I think James Franco mostly did a decent job as Harry, except for Spider Man 3, but I think that might have. I guess you could argue that was the script's fault, but I mean, again, during that scene when he's drinking coffee and the woman says, "Oh, how's your coffee?" and he says, "So good." I think that was kind of on him. Um, but yeah, so I'm glad he didn't play Spider Man, because that just would have been. I mean, I could just imagine him just. I mean, don't get me wrong. Tobey Maguire was a horrible Spider Man, and he definitely overacted the nerdiness. Um, but I mean, James Franco would have just overacted it. I mean, to hell. But yeah. So thank God James Franco did not play Spider Man. Next up, on number 5 is Leonardo DiCaprio. You see, back in the 90s, uh, James Cameron planned to write and direct a Spider-Man movie, and it was horrible. I mean, in the script, Spider-Man says to Electro, "I'll kill you! I'll kill you, you mother f worders!" I'm not even kidding. And he beats his enemies to death. He was a lot more. Spider-Man was a lot more violent, and Peter has sex with MJ on either I can't remember if it was it was either the Brooklyn Bridge or the George Washington Bridge. I'm pretty sure it was the George Washington Bridge. But yeah, on one of the bridges, which is the same bridge where Gwen Stacy dies in the comics, he basically screws her, and at that point, she doesn't even know he's Spider-Man. So that just makes it all the more creepy. And you can actually read the script online. Um, and it's funny because at the very beginning of the script, he writes something that basically points out very specifically. There's actually a script note where he specifically points out, and he says, Peter is a virgin, and he plans to stay that way for quite a while. Well, nope, apparently not. I don't know why they had to point that out, but nope. And for those that have heard about the what was it? The 90s Spider-Man show, the animated show. Oh god, it was such a great show. So much freaking nostalgia. In that, you may have noticed that Sandman never appeared in the show, and Electro only appeared in like one story arc, and he wasn't even Max Dillon. He was a Russian dude who was intended to be the the son of Red Skull and the brother of the Chameleon. Um, well, and the reason why was because James Cameron originally wanted Sandman and Electro as his villains. So originally, after it was announced he was directing, Fox, who made they were the network that made the Spider-Man animated series. They basically said, "Oh well, it's James Cameron. He's a household name. And they basically assumed since he had done Alien and Terminator, and obviously in a bunch of other stuff. Predator, so many iconic movies nowadays so many movies that are just so iconic, such iconic classics. And of course, he would go on to direct Avatar, which is the highest grossing movie of all time, and also the most overrated movie of all time. But the question is, who is going to play Spider-Man in a script? Hold on, I think my screen is frozen for a second. Okay, sorry. So the question is, who is going to play Spider-Man? Well, Spider-Man hadn't really been cast yet, but he had said many times before that he wanted Leonardo DiCaprio to play Spider-Man. This was a terrible idea. Leonardo DiCaprio he's way too classy for Peter Parker. I know he played the poor kid in Titanic, but I mean, again, I think Leonardo DiCaprio is a much better actor than James Franco is, but I still think that his performance would have been just as equal as James Franco's. He would have just had a really wacky Spider-Man. I think if it was James Franco or Leonardo DiCaprio who ended up playing Spider-Man, they would have played a really, really wacky Spider-Man, like an overly wacky Spider-Man, probably like not just like clumsy as Peter Parker, but probably somebody who's clumsy as Spider-Man as well. Kind of like the crappy Spider-Man on that crappy Ultimate Spider-Man show. So I'm glad he didn't play him. And there was he was sort of in final negotiations, but not really. But yeah, I'm just really glad he didn't play the role. And of course, James Cameron ended up, stepping down from the role of director, which I am very glad about. Because his script sounded terrible. He's a great director, but that script just sucked crap. But so yeah, so that's Leonardo DiCaprio's Spider-Man. Now, next off is okay. Now we're really getting in to the bad choices, like choices that would have just botched up Spider-Man, like just would have ruined Spider-Man to death. Like, I mean, these would have been like childhood ruining casting choices. But yeah, number 4 is Taylor Lautner. I'm not kidding. Okay, first of all, Taylor Lautner is a terrible actor. He's a horrible actor. He did a horrible job in Twilight. Second of all, way too muscular. Now, as some of you may know, I'm not really digging the whole idea of Dylan O'Brien as Spider-Man like some people are. Part of the reason why is because of how muscular he is. But like Taylor Lautner is like so freaking. I mean, he's incredibly muscular. I mean, he looks like I don't know. Looks like he it looks like he came out of a battle, like a wrestling match or an arm. It looks like he won an arm wrestling match with the Hulk or the Lizard. Another thing, way too many tattoos. I mean, Peter Parker is not supposed to have tattoos. I mean, I don't know if maybe they hide the tattoos, and I don't know. Is he supposed to be Asian? Because he looks kind of Asian. I wouldn't mind an Asian Peter Parker, although I know it would sort of piss off some fanboys. Um, but yeah, so Taylor Lautner, terrible choice, and he auditioned. I think he was on the short list to play Spider-Man in uh, the Amazing Spider-Man 1. So it's really scary to think how recent that was. I just can only hope because at the moment they're casting a new Spider-Man, like casting a new actor to play Peter Parker in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I can only hope to God that that version is not, is not. I can just hope to God they don't pick Taylor Lautner to come back and do that. I mean, I don't think they will, but then again, anything's possible. Like I remember back in right after the Dark Knight, back when the Dark Knight Rises came out, there was there's a like a critic reviews podcast that I listened to on TuneIn, and they were reviewing all the Batman movies. And so they said a fact when they were reviewing Batman Begins, they were talking about a fact that I didn't know. Apparently, Ben Affleck was originally considered to play Batman in Christopher Nolan's Batman. And I remember at the time I was like, "What? Okay, good. I'm just glad they didn't go with him." Well, they ended up going with him. But I have come to love. No, I haven't come to love, but I've come to you know accept him as Batman. Not completely, because the movie hasn't come out yet. But I mean, I'm really starting to buy into the fact that this is Batman, and I know he made some he was in some bad movies before, like G or whatever it is, G, which is considered by many to be one of the worst movies of all time. Actually, some people consider it to be the worst movie of all time. Um, and Daredevil, and Pearl Harbor, but in recent years he's matured. He's gotten older and he's matured. Um, it's not like with it sort of was getting to that point with kind of like with James Franco, where he was starting to turn into a joke. But he ended up not turning into a joke. But yeah, so let's get back to Spider-Man. Um, so next up, number 3, Charlie Sheen. Oh my God! So that's another actor who has become a complete joke. I mean, not only that, not actually. You know what? I take that back. A joke is is not what Charlie Sheen is. Charlie Sheen is anything but a joke. I should not have ever called him a joke. I'm sorry, Charlie Sheen, for calling you a joke, because that is an understatement for what you are, my friend. Oh my God. I mean, this guy makes James Franco and Shia LaBeouf look like Oscar winners. I mean, ever since he got involved with drugs, his life has just been screwed up. Yeah. So he was gonna play Spider-Man. Great. I'm not sure. I know it was before 2002 when they said he was gonna play Spider-Man. Not really sure. I believe, yeah. Was it Tobe Hooper's? Yeah, I believe it was Toby Hooper's Spider-Man that he was gonna play. Um, but yeah, I mean, in all fairness, his career was a lot different at the time. At the time, he wasn't considered a joke. But again, I mean, you guys say, a lot of people say that Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker is a jerk. I think that Charlie Sheen would have played the most unlikable Spider-Man of all time. I mean, Andrew Garfield, I don't think he would have been looked at. I don't think his Spider-Man. Let's say that Charlie Sheen became Spider-Man, and then um, Andrew Garfield, he became Spider-Man afterwards, kind of like with Tobey Maguire. Like, let's say Charlie Sheen took the place of Tobey Maguire, and then Andrew Garfield came afterwards. I'm pretty sure that Charlie Sheen would have been the jerkiest Spider-Man ever, and he would have been such a jerk that when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man came along, one of even the people that now say that Andrew Spider-Man is a jerk would probably applaud the movie for making him likable, because I mean I just cannot see a way how even before Charlie Sheen became a joke, he still played very snarky, arrogant roles. So I just don't see how this dude could play Spider-Man. And it may shock you guys that he is only at number 3, but there are 2 other casting choices which are even worse. So get ready for them. Okay. Number 2. What's more ridiculous than Charlie Sheen? Tom Cruise. That's right. That is right. Tom Cruise almost freaking played Spider-Man. And I know he was going to be in Toby Hooper's Spider-Man. Now, for those who don't know what Toby Hooper's Spider-Man was going to be, I believe Toby Hooper, he started writing scripts for that Spider-Man movie back in, I'm pretty sure it was the 80s. Maybe it was the late 70s even, but I know it was the 80s. He had the most atrocious idea for a Spider-Man script ever. So what his script was going to be was it was going to be Peter Parker is a photographer, as always, blah blah blah. He works for the Daily Bugle. So he goes to a scientist's lab named Dr. Zork. Now that all sounds fine at first, aside from the name Dr. Zork, because I mean, who would want the name Dr. Zork? I mean that sounds so 80s ish. If you guys know those cheesy, like low budget little 80s video games where they have the tiny little animated dude like jumping up and down, jumping onto things. If you know that, like they always had like the titles of those video games, those little video games, those I don't even think they were video games. They were like computer games. Well, I don't think they were called video games. I think they were called like computer games or something. They were always like, they had like really cheesy names, um, like usually video games that started with Z, but they'd be like uh, Zario or something like that. It was really weird, but that's what his name sounds like. But getting to the point, Toby Hooper, he wrote a Spider-Man script where Spider-Man, Peter Parker. It turns out this Dr. Zork guy, who does not exist in the comics, was a mad scientist. Uh-oh. So he accidentally turns Peter Parker into a giant spider. Not a spider-like human being, because that's what Spider-Man's supposed to be, a spider-like human being. Well, he's a normal human being, but he has, spider-like powers. But with Dr. Zork, he was going to make Spider-Man into a giant thing. I was going to turn him into an actual gigantic living spider. I'm not even kidding. And the premise was basically he had to escape the basement of Dr. Zork, and there were apparently a bunch of other monsters in Dr. Zork's basement, and so he had to fight them all off. And Tom Cruise was considered to play Spider-Man. I'm not even kidding. So Spider-Man was going to be played by, well, he was in final negotiations to play Spider-Man. And it was just bizarre. It was like, I mean, can you imagine like getting drunk like one night and then going to see the midnight premiere of a Spider-Man movie where Peter Parker gets turned into a giant spider by a mad scientist named Dr. Zork. I always imagine Dr. Zork looking like Dr. Two Brains from Word Girl. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine like Peter Parker being turned into a giant spider by a mad scientist, probably cheesy mad scientist since it was the 80s, named Dr. Zork, and having to fight like a bunch of monsters in his basement, only only to be played by Tom Cruise. I mean, that would have just been the weirdest thing. I mean, imagine being drunk and watching that. I mean, that would have just been bizarre. But yeah, Tom Cruise, overrated actor, not a very good actor. Actually, the only two actors, the only two good actors on this list that I can really think of are Heath Ledger and Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, I guess you could say James Franco's kind of mediocre, but he's a joke nowadays. Yeah, I mean, Heath Ledger is an Oscar winner, and Leonardo DiCaprio should be Oscar winner, but isn't. Yeah, so Tom Cruise, A, way too much of a pretty boy. B, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, how can you see? I mean, just tell me, how could you see Tom Cruise playing a nerdy? And I know Tom Cruise. It was a different time in history. Tom Cruise was a lot younger. We didn't realize how overrated Tom Cruise was. I mean, Tom Cruise is an overrated actor. I mean, he's not necessarily a bad actor, but all he'll do is he'll just stare at the camera and then wink. That's it. And I hate that about him. And I heard that what was the Live Die Born Again movie or whatever it was called. I can't remember what it was called. I didn't see it, but it was the one where you die and then you wake up again, and the exact same thing repeats. Yeah, I heard that that was actually pretty good, but I haven't seen that. Tom Cruise is an overrated actor, but again, even at the time, how do you really think that like Tom Cruise as like a kid pretty boy could play like a nerdy, shy outsider who you know who uh who can't find any friends? I personally don't think he could. Um I mean, maybe that's just me, but I just cannot see Tom Cruise doing that. Um, but number one, what could be worse than Tom Cruise? What could be worse than Tom Cruise, Charlie Sheen, Taylor Lautner, and Leonardo DiCaprio as Spider-Man? How about for our number one choice, Michael Jackson? Now, Michael Jackson is talented, but and maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a huge Michael Jackson fan, but I don't think he's been in any movies. I mean, I don't. I mean, maybe he was in like a movie to like maybe back in the old days to promote one of his music videos, kind of like Frank Sinatra did with what was that movie called? It was the one where it was actually kind of bad. I think it was like the jazz singer or something, where he played that Jewish guy who cheated on his wife, and made his father angry. Can't remember what that was called. It wasn't a great movie, but yeah, I just can't remember the name of it. But it might have been. But I think it was just to promote his songs, so it might have been like that. But I mean, aside from that, I don't know any big, you know, like any big like blockbuster movies that Michael Jackson has starred in. Any big movies that he's been in that don't promote him. Um, but to sum it up, and this is a ridiculous story, but around the early 2000s, Michael Jackson wasn't just going to star as Spider-Man. He intended also to direct it. Now, it wasn't actually confirmed whether he would be Spider-Man if this happened, but but it was very likely according to Stan Lee. And I'll tell you the reason why. The story is that um, in the early 2000s, like before 2002, like maybe just I would say probably 2000 itself. But at that point, Michael Jackson had heard that a Spider-Man movie was in the works, and there was no Spider-Man movies then. I mean, yeah, nowadays we're getting another reboot, and we're like up to our knees in Spider-Man movies. Um, but at the time, we didn't have there was no Spider-Man movie. People planned it for years, but we never had it. Well, Michael Jackson walks into Stan Lee's office. He says, I want to buy the rights to Spider-Man. I want to buy the movie rights to Spider-Man, and I want to direct it. And Stan Lee said in an interview that he believes that Spider-Man, that he intended to play Spider-Man, um, well, that he thinks he intended to play Spider-Man, but didn't. Um, so so he said, so what Stan Lee said to Michael Jackson after he asked about this was he said, well, look, buddy, I'm sorry, but we just sold the rights to Sony. So we can't give you that. Sony's already working on their Spider-Man movie right now. They already have a director. His name's Sam Raimi. We can't do this. I'm sorry. So yeah, that was the end of it. So this was a really bizarre choice. Well, a really bizarre list of people that almost played Spider-Man. Scary. I can only hope that when Marvel finally casts their Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's still in the process of being casted, I can only hope that none of these actors play Spider-Man. First of all, two of them are deceased. The one on the bottom of this list, Heath Ledger, and the one at the top of this list, Michael Jackson. So rest in peace to them. They were very talented. My condolences go to them. Yeah, so whoever they pick, just don't pick these people. Just don't pick James Franco, Leonardo DiCaprio. That would be even more ridiculous today than it was at the time. Taylor Lautner, Charlie Sheen, and Tom Cruise. And yeah, Charlie Sheen and Tom Cruise, that would be even more ridiculous today than Leonardo DiCaprio if Spider-Man would be today. Just don't pick them, okay? Okay. All right, I'm out now, guys. Bye.